Welcome to the Geek Homeworld. I am your host, SavageTechman. We talk sci-fi, TV, movies, superheroes, and all from a geek perspective. You can find us on Blogger, Google+, Twitter, Facebook. We're everywhere. Join the Geek Homeworld. Hello there, this is Ed, aka SavageTechman, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast. We're going to talk about a few quick things here this week, and I want to thank everybody who's been listening to the podcast and getting their geek on with us. One of the first things I really want to just dive right in and just talk about, and our last episode, this is episode 32. On episode 31, we had our spoiler-free edition of Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my feelings on this one. So there may be some spoilers in. If you have not seen it, then, postpone this portion of the episode or fast forward a little bit until we get out of the topic of Batman vs. Superman. But let's talk about Dawn of Justice. It had one of the biggest openings in comic book movie history, but the critics are being very, very rough on this movie. Rotten Tomatoes has given it, I think, around a 29% rotten notion on that. I'm a little speechless. I was a little speechless right there because I don't get it. There is a massively divided group between the critics and some fans of the series. In this movie, there's been so much anticipation for Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. Basically, they're trying to fast forward Man of Steel and DC and start their cinematic Marvel-like universe, for DC, obviously, but they're trying to do it a different way. And I think it was done really well. In this movie, Dawn of Justice, it's perplexing. It's just got me really confused because I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. Was it the greatest comic book movie adaptation or whatever of all time? The greatest superhero movie of all time? No, it was not. In fact, I can find some flaws in it. I can see where it pulled from other movies like The Dark Knight, but it did phenomenally well at the box office. As of its second week in here, it's made almost $700 million worldwide in just these 2 weeks, and domestically it's made over $260 million of that worldwide box office. So it's, instead of Batman versus Superman, it's more like the critics versus the fans. The fans really have spoken by going out and seeing this and watching it again, and there's been some talk via the internet and other means that maybe the critics were intentionally panning this movie. I mean, it's gotten worse ratings than the Fantastic Four reboot, which everybody pretty much across the board agrees was a horrible movie to begin with, even the actors that were in it. But I have a soft spot, not a soft spot so much, but just for a brilliant movie that transcends comic book superhero, supervillain movies. The Dark Knight, with Heath Ledger and Christian Bale as Batman, all excellent performances in that movie. Compare, contrast to Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, very strong performances. In fact, we were talking last episode, Man of Steel. Man of Steel was a good movie, but Batman vs. Superman, far much better. A more intense, more critical of the moment kind of movie. And when I compare, when I think of DC movies, and I think of my all-time comic book superhero related movies, I think of The Dark Knight is transcending the genre. Did Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice transcend the genre of just being a comic book superhero movie? Not so much, but it came very close. I thought it was intriguing. In fact, there was a scene in there where Ben Affleck, who did a wonderful job as Bruce Wayne and Batman, I do not. The Batfleck did well. I do not feel bad about his performance in the movie at all. Henry Cavill did an excellent job, and he played a kind of tortured Superman, a torn Superman between what people see him as a god, and other people see him as a false god, and it's interesting, the dynamic. I didn't get the whole Batman versus Superman thing when it was first brought out, other than, of course, seeing the DVD movies, which were brilliant, and the Frank Millar stuff that was done, but of the original source material for that. But Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice, I think they did it justice. The actors in it were well rounded, well played by all the actors, and I think what it might be next to The Dark Knight, this is definitely one of my favorite superhero movies, and it was very compelling. But I think what it was is, the closest I can come to it is that the expectations were almost too high, and there was so much pre-promotion for this movie. This was going to be epic, and it was going to be everything. Pretty much like the hype for Star Wars The Force Awakens. The only exception between the two movies is The Force Awakens really delivered. And it delivered some deep emotional punches, as it were, like the death of Han Solo and stuff like that. It really felt... I was so reassured. People that know me, good friends of mine, know how apprehensive I was to see... how excited yet apprehensive I was to see Star Wars The Force Awakens, and I didn't hardly even see it until, bought tickets just like at the very last moment, and I didn't go crazy. I was just scared to death. Fear is the path to the dark side, we know, but I was really in fear that it might not be that good, that what if The Force Awakens ruins my whole Star Wars for my entire life. The prequels were good in their own rights, but it still didn't totally ruin Star Wars for me. But The Force Awakens could totally kill it for me, and I was hoping it didn't. And it was a very well done movie and very compelling. But when we talk about Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice, I thought it was very compelling. I thought it was the fight scenes, the action. It was very spectacular. It totally kept my interest throughout the movie. Wonder Woman was awesome. I was worried about Gal Gadot, how she would portray her character, and I enjoyed it. Would I like to see a brighter Superman, a more optimistic Christopher Reeve-like Superman? Yes. But I realized with Man of Steel and the times we live in, we're probably never going to see that. And if you want to hear some of my thoughts on that, listen to the last episode 31, where we did our spoiler-free review of Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. And like I said last episode, to quote the Joker, Heath Ledger's brilliant portrayal of the Joker, you've changed things, and to quote him, and really The Dark Knight did that. So everything that came after had to be dark, and Batman vs. Superman had to be dark. I know, I wish it wasn't as dark, but honestly, this movie needed to be dark. What's coming up, and spoilers alert again here, where we see Flash come through and say Lois Lane is the key, and Batman has all these dreams, and he sees the Omega symbol and the parademons in the desert, one of the best scenes in the movie. And in the end, with Lex Luthor saying, Darkseid, he didn't say Darkseid was coming, but you knew, if you knew anything about those references, and there were so many Easter eggs in Dawn of Justice, that either Justice League or something, I assume the Justice League movies are going to deal with it, definitely, but Darkseid. There's a rumor floating out around now that instead of Darkseid now, Justice League Part 1 will deal with Atlantis, and I don't know. We will see, but I imagine Darkseid's going to be there in the thick of things, and it's going to be epic. Superman, obviously, spoiler alert, dying in Dawn of Justice. I wasn't kind of expecting that. When they brought Doomsday in, I thought it was a possibility, and they were almost very true to the comics on this. And Lex Luthor, how malevolent was he? Very quirky, but I think we're going to get a far more serious one, because we saw him, his head shaved in prison later on, and Eisenberg did a great job on just portraying Lex Luthor in almost a maniacal way, almost juxtaposition to how Heath Ledger played, and maybe Jared Leto will play the Joker. Things are getting darker. But Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, it was a very good movie, and I'm not saying it's a bad movie. Could have been better, yes. There were things I wanted to see. We got our Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman cameos, and those were great. I still want to see Martian Manhunter, and I hope they some way find a way to bring him in. Obviously, he's on Supergirl. Like on Supergirl, we saw the Flash crossing over to there. I love that they're doing that. So DC on the small screen is really doing well through CW and CBS with Supergirl, and they renewed Supergirl. And we're seeing it on the small screen, and we're seeing it on the big screen. Now, Captain America: Civil War is going to be Avengers 2.5, or even better, maybe than Age of Ultron that came out. I believe it's Civil War is going to change things for Marvel big time. There's some new Doctor Strange videos and stuff coming out, some stuff from the set there. They were filming in New York. I'm excited for Doctor Strange, and I definitely will. Somebody asked me, who I met recently, a fellow geek, asked me what my thoughts on Doctor Strange were, and if you're listening, there'll be more to come, I promise. But Benedict Cumberbatch as Stephen Strange, I'm looking very forward to his portrayal. Some of the early shots I've seen of that, totally think he's nailed the role. He looks like Stephen Strange. He looks like, Doctor Strange, and how that's weaved into maybe Captain America: Civil War, or, beyond that in the Marvel movies will be great. But I want to talk one last thing before I get off the topic of Batman versus Superman. I want to talk about DC is always, and I've always said this, and fans of the show will agree with me on this, and some of my very close friends will, that DC does wonderful straight to DVD Blu-ray movies. And one of the ones that they've done so many with Darkseid and everyone else, and I could just name them off. Marvel so far has owned the big screen. Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice is a big leap, no pun intended, Superman reference there, but a big leap in the right direction, I think. And I think it was a monumental undertaking by everyone involved, and I was thoroughly pleased with Dawn of Justice. Could have been better? Yes, it could have been better. There are some plot holes. There are a few things that I would have made better, but you know what? I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I encourage all of you fans out there to please go out and support Dawn of Justice. And I want you to go out and see it again if you haven't, because it's definitely worth seeing. It's a comic book brought to life. It's very, very much, the death of Superman, and it's also the Dark Knight graphic novels a little bit mixed in there. There's so many references, like the horse that runs in front of Bruce Wayne, and the Sons of Batman, which in this case were the Sons of Superman, and in the Darkseid moment there, the dream, and the time traveling element with the Flash coming through to Batman was awesome. So basically, Superman's supposedly dead. We know he comes back, obviously, and Batman's going to be in charge of putting together the Justice League, and having a human do that instead of a superhero is what they were kind of shooting for. So it'll be interesting to see. Now we're talking about DC graphic novels and Blu-ray, straight to Blu-ray /DVD or downloads or whatever. There's been a lot of them. DC owns the market on that. And the teaser trailer just dropped this week for Batman the Killing Joke, and it's based on the 1988 graphic novel that was written by Alan Moore, and it was and also Brian Boland, and it's considered one of the greatest graphic novels, probably the definitive Joker storyline, one of the best. In fact, it won a 1989. In 1989, it won Best Graphic Album, winning the Eisner Award for Best Graphic Album. And it was even on back in 2009 after The Dark Knight came out in theaters. It jumped back on the New York Times bestseller list in I think around May of 2009. So The Dark Knight was inspired by that. The Killing Joke was a very brutal, probably the most brutal graphic novels I've ever read, and it changed a lot of things, and it's just very gruesome, very graphic in the sense of graphic novels. It really was, and without any kind of spoilers on here, it basically, one of Batman's inner circle, who later becomes another character, is shot, and it's a person in Batman's inner circle by the Joker, and they are permanently damaged or hurt. If I say the word, you'll know exactly what it is. And those of you, obviously, that know the graphic novel, if you haven't read it, maybe you should wait and read it. I'm not sure whether you should read it first or see the R-rated version that's coming out. It should be the first DC R-rated, straight to Blu-ray DVD cartoon. But it's going to be super awesome. Now, the critics were very kind to The Killing Joke, saying it was wonderful and it was just very intense. But if you think about, if they talked and I think it was in an interview in like 2000 or so, or early 2000s, they talked with Alan Moore, and he said basically that he really wasn't impressed. He thought it was kind of a good book, but he didn't think it was terribly an interesting storyline. He asked them, could he go in there, and did they have any problems, the DC people, with him doing that gruesome deed in the book that the Joker does to one of Batman's inner circle people? And they're like, I can't repeat what they said because it'll give it away too, but they were like, yeah, and he, go ahead for it. And he later on regretted doing that to that character. But if you watch The Flash, it's on CW, you kind of see one of the characters on there emulating, and I don't want to say more because that's too much of a spoiler alert, but one of those characters actually takes on that title temporarily in an episode, and they have a similar fate, and which they've recovered from. But anyway, one of the exciting things about this is that Mark Hamill basically started a petition, and he came out of Joker retirement to voice the Joker on The Killing Joke, and it's been the fans have gone crazy, and so this is going to sell like hotcakes. It's going to be a very positive thing. There's even going to be a 15-minute prologue that sets up the whole storyline of this when it comes out, The Killing Joke. So that's I think that noise in the background is sounds like some bats in my belfry, but so that must be Alfred taking care of things in the background. Thank you, Alfred. So, but we're also getting Kevin Conroy to come back from Batman the Animated Series, and he is going to voice Batman. He is literally voiced the character longer than anybody's ever played the character of Batman, so good for him. And we're also going to get Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, back, and Commissioner Gordon, played by Ray Wise, Tara Strong playing Barbara Gordon. So very excited for The Killing Joke that's coming out. It's going to be awesome. Now, tonight on not CW, but AMC, we're getting the Walking Dead Season 6 finale. And I already had a tweet out there. Who's going to die tonight? Who is Negan and who will possibly die? I am going to be highly upset if it's Michonne. If Daryl dies, there's going to be a riot. They're not going to kill Rick, obviously. He's the star of the show. But Maggie could die. Morgan could die. Carl could lose his other eye, his good one. Or maybe his hat dies. I don't know. And then if they kill Carol, I'll be upset too. But I could almost see this being out for Carol. But if it's Morgan, yeah, he's not going to fight back. He's going to go all Jedi on him and everything, try to be non-violent. But a thing that excites me about the Season 6 finale is that next week we get Season 2 of Fear the Walking Dead. And I'm excited to see how the walkers actually, do they walk on the bottom of the ocean or the water, because they go to this boat and they go to like this island on the previews, and that's going to be interesting to see. So our theory of going to an island early on, we were like, that's where you should go somewhere, offshore somewhere, a desert island or something to survive the zombie apocalypse. But apparently that won't work. It may take the walkers a while to get there, but eventually they're going to get there. So, what happens to the people on the zombie flight, and how will that tie into the series? So that's going to be interesting to see how that all ties into everything. So we got to stay tuned for that tonight. Let us know here at Geek Homeworld on Twitter. Let us know your thoughts. You'll see our poll that's up there now. Well, by the time this episode airs, I guess I'll give you the answers to what people said on the poll, who they thought was going to die, if anyone dies on this episode. But hopefully it won't be any of the main characters. But any good series needs to have the main characters die off. You're not going to go 6-7 seasons and not have people actually die off. So there's going to be issues with losing main characters along the way, and we lost some beloved characters along the way. So we shall see. So let us know what you think and hit us back here at Geek Homeworld. Anyway, thank you for joining us for another wonderful episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast. We're talking about all things geek. We want to hear from you. Contact us via Twitter at Geek Homeworld and hit us back. We'll start a discussion there. We're always talking about things in the world of geek. And I thank you so much, and talk to you later. Bye. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast with your host, SavageTechman. You can find us on Libsyn, Google+, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, listen to us on iTunes, see us on YouTube, be part of our Mixler chats. Thank you. See you again on the Geek Homeworld podcast.